this is Paul from 5speeds.com. Today I'm going to give you a lesson on a product I designed called the Countergear Stabilizer Plate. This is a Countergear Stabilizer Plate. It was designed to replace the factory rear bearing retainer plate that's used on a T5 world-class transmission. It's specifically used to hold the rear bearing and race of the countergear. And what happens is that on the normal conditions it's fine, but on the race conditions where a transmission is maybe being subjected to 150 mile an hour use, the plate would stretch out. Any of the in-place settings that originally were in the transmission got looser and the gear set would explode. So what I came up with, the simple idea is to make the steel plate that wouldn't stretch. It would also hold the rear bearing race inside the plate too, because the factory plate does not hold the rear bearing race. The rear bearing race kind of floats in that. The problem is in a factory transmission, this is an aluminum bore, and you've got a steel race in this bore constantly trying to pound itself down. And what happens is the bore will end up getting egg-shaped, because again, this plate does nothing to hold it in place. Now, my plate's been copied by many people. Since 1995, probably I know 4 companies that have copied the plate. Oddly, they've copied it and made cheaper versions out of aluminum. That defeats the purpose, because the reason why I made a steel plate was so that the steel bearing race would be supported by steel and would not be able to dig into the aluminum case. If you have an aluminum plate, well, the steel bearing race is just going to dig into that aluminum plate and then again dig into the case. The other thing is that people are now making steel plates out of China, which don't fit. And I happen to show you in this video that I made how the reason why the Chinese plates aren't good and the issues with them. My plates are USA made. I designed the plate. It's been copied again by many people. That's a problem this day and age, but hopefully that you'll continue buying my plates and supporting my products, and hopefully you'll get something out of this video, a good lesson, and enjoy it. Thank you very much. You may be able to see it or not, but the one on the right, the Chinese one, has larger holes, which are wrong. As you can see, when we put the bolts in these, how much slop the bolts have in the holes, compared to my plate, which I drew up, has no slop. The other is that there's a sizable difference in the thickness of the plates, the Chinese one being a lot thicker, which will interfere with the 5th gear. I designed this plate back in 1994. It's been copied by about 3 or 4 different Mustang companies. I designed it to be steel specifically so that it can also support the bearing race. And a lot of times when you take apart a T5 5-speed, the bearing race that's in here will cut inside the case because it's aluminum and the race is steel. So the idea was to put this on here, the steel piece on there, so it'll girdle the case, add support so the stamped steel plate won't stretch, but also will not allow the bearing race to dig no longer into the aluminum case. So I'm going to take this plate off, this case here, just to show you how it's done. These have locking tabs on them from the factory. A lot of times if you just take a gun and are careful, you can actually let the bolt remove the lock tabs itself. It'll just kind of push them out of the way. Just like that. What you're going to see here is the plate, the shim, and the race. Now if you notice, the race really isn't held by the plate at all. The case's job is to hold the race, which again is aluminum. And a lot of the Mustang transmissions I take apart, this race is already dug into the case and egg-shaped the hole of the case. And that's what typically happens on a lot of cars that are used in drag race applications. So the idea of the plate is that it will grab the race and secure it and keep it from digging into the case. This is very important. Even with the shim in it, the race is still held so that it cannot dig into the case. And that was one part of my design that was very important. The other is these plates, because of the size, what I was finding is that they were stretching over a period of time. The stamped steel plate would stretch and the countergear would loosen up and the transmission would blow up. So first thing I'm going to show you is, let me get this up higher. Something simple here. If you put the bearing race back in the case, make sure it's seated. You do this, make sure it's seated, it's spinning okay. Take your old shim, put it in, and take the plate and put it on top. Go like this. And you can see it's not even touching the case, so you're going to have a shorter shim. This will preload the counter gear too much. You almost want it to where it's just barely touching the case, so that when you lock down on the bolts, of course it's going to preload it. So we're not going to use these, we're going to use the new screws that come. Now what I want to show you is that if you look at my screws, the way they all fit in nice, and everything is perfect here. See? And there's no movement. Now, let's go put the Chinese one on that's on eBay. It's about half the price as mine. Plus, you should buy USA-made products when you can. Support our economy. What you'll see is if you put this one in here like this, the reason why they made bigger holes is because they don't line up correctly. And it'll fit in, but you have to be very careful, because when you lock this down, which is going to happen is that they're not going to line up correctly. I'll show you what I mean by that. If you take this here and put it on here, you'll see tapers are going to be off, and it's going to try to kick the plate over to the side. This one here is off center. And when you're doing this and you're locking down on a taper, what's going to happen is this plate's going to loosen up eventually, no matter how much you Loctite it. But and you'll see that the gear is also hitting the plate. So this is your Chinese plate. Now what I'm going to do is I'll show you how my peel and place shims work. My plate kit comes with the shims. My plate kit comes with Loctite as well. You can buy just the bare plates from me, as cheap as $35 if you have your own shims. The plates come with the bolts, or you can buy the full kit with the shim and the Loctite for $59.95, and instructions included. So we know that my plate, when it goes on here, we're going to need less shim. So we're going to simply just measure this here with a caliper, see what we got as a reference, and we've got 120 thousandths worth of shim. Now I can use my peel and place shims, which basically comes with a service shim, and it comes with a peelable shim. The service shims run from about 88 to 90 thousandths, and you can peel these service shims down by just simply, they always come started, you can just peel them off like this. This is a design that I found when I was doing gearboxes for army tanks. We used to have shims like this. So you have to use a razor and be very careful, and you start peeling the shim down. These are not easy to do, and you can cut yourself, so be very careful. A lot of times you could slice the shim if you want with a little grinder to take off more material as needed, but it's better to do it this way. And you just keep on peeling down. So I probably got a little bit more to go here. I've done a lot of these, so I kind of know where I got to be. But let's see where we're at now. Now we said the other one again was 120, and we need to go down probably to about 110. So we still got a way to go. We got 150 right now. The reason why I came up with this was simply because the amount of money it cost to buy a whole shim set, especially from Ford or Chevy, was like $60, where you can buy one of these complete shims for only $4.95. Plus it makes packaging rebuild kits a whole hell of a lot easier. But you be very careful because again these razors can actually break. You don't want that easy. You can see it, but this lip here is it's kind of a direction, so you never want to peel them from the back side. When you buy the shims from me, they already peeled. You know, start to peel so you could see which direction they go into. Let's see what we got now. Now we have about 112 thousandths. That's kind of where we want to be. Big difference. Put this back in. So basically our shims peel in 3/1000 increments, which is perfect. After you've got your bolts tightened down, I set these to 20 to 25 foot-pounds. These wrenches, these sockets are tight. This is at 20 foot-pounds. This is plenty. Now normally you'd be using thread locker on these threads. Once you've got it torqued down, you can even see it a little bit. I'm going to remove this plastic funnel because I'm going to put my inch-pounds torque wrench to check. If you're going for a rebuild, there's new funnels in the kits anyway, but you can pry these funnels out like this. It's not a problem. These inch-pound torque wrenches with the dial, I purchased this one from Snap-on Tools years ago. It's a worthwhile investment, especially if you're doing rear axles where you need to measure pinion drag. Anyway, you can set this around here. You set it to 0. You can put this drive right into the hole of the countergear like that. The little spring thing will hold it in place. The little spring ball will hold it in place. And you see I'm going back and forth now. And you can see it's reading perfectly at about 3 to 4 inch-pounds of drag. This is exactly where I want it. Hopefully you can see that pretty good in the video. This feels nice and tight. This is going to go nowhere. Next thing is, let's see how my 5th gear fits on here now. Perfect. Doesn't hit the plate at all. And you see our clearance that we have? Perfect. Normally for road racing you may want to grind some flats in here for oil. That's something I do. But that's it. That's my Countergear stabilizer. This is the original stabilizer plate I designed back in 1995 for road racing. Also, notice the way it is cut out here. And notice that it doesn't really line up properly with this hole. The reason for this is that on some cases where I use special overdrive gears, you'll see everybody copy this, but they don't know why it's there. It's there because I actually bored a case out for bigger bearings, and this is for the bigger bearing clearance. So that when I put the bigger bearings in and the bigger gears, there's still room for it to clear the plate. So I've machined them like this for years. People copy them all the time dimensionally, but they don't know why it's there. So when you see plates like this copied, you know it's a copy of mine because basically they've copied the same design. Even this one here, the Chinese copy, they've copied the same cut on it. And again, not knowing why. So, buy my plates, buy USA. Thank you.